guys, welcome back to my channel. So a couple of months ago I made a video using UV resin and you could say that it popped off. It was featured in the suggested content of this video and this video and this video and several others, and while I am incredibly thankful, it was really overwhelming. I went from like 25 followers to over 100, and now we've just hit 200, which I know is very small, but for me is quite a bit. And since then, I've been in this battle, this mental battle, thinking, do I make more UV resin videos? Because the point of this channel is for me to go through all of the random art supplies I already have and use them up and make things just for me so that you guys can see, maybe learn something, but mostly so that I can just like meme about in my garage. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to just immediately left of field make one or more or a million versions of the same video that I know that viewers are gonna come and see. So that was video number 4, that first UV resin one, and this is like, I think 11 or 12. So I think I've waited long enough. Let's do some more UV resin stuff. So I went out and I got some mirrors, because the thing that I have been just ruminating about when it comes to UV resin and resin in general is pouring onto mirrors. There is this lady on Instagram that I have followed for ages, but quite a few others that have been pouring translucent resin onto mirrors, and you can see through the resin, you can still see the mirror, and it just has this like really cool effect. So I've got a couple of circle mirrors, and I have these tiny eeny weeny, they're so small, look, these tiny eeny weeny silicone molds that make tiny goldfish and tiny sharks, and I thought, let's just make like a little aquarium situation inside of a mirror. If you are here as one of the people who followed me from that original UV resin video, thank you so much. Seeing everyone's comments has been wild. So thank you for tuning in. Let's get started, and we will swap over to my overhead camera. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a bit of planning on paper so I can get my head around it, and then I'll show you some of the materials I'm going to be using. So at the moment I have got 4 circle mirrors. No, I don't, I have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so what I kind of want to create, I want to replicate the kind of look with the transparent resin on here so you can still see the mirror effect. And then I want to create some texture. So the way I'm going to do that, I have these blue flakes, and we'll mix that into some clear resin, and that's gonna have some height to it. So we'll pour some like blue translucent resin over here, and then we'll mix this up, and it'll be thick, it'll be like a thick boy. And then like we can create like a bit of a pattern, and I mean this is a texture so I could probably just wipe it off later, but I want to create sort of like a, I don't know, sort of like a pattern like this. So this will be super shiny, you won't be able to see through it, I'll be able to build it up, and then the rest of it, you'll be able to see it like it is, but it'll be like a little bit blue. And I want to do that for all 5. So I'll make a blue one, a pink one, a purple one. We'll decide the colors in just a sec. It'll be like a rainbow. And then once that's dry, that's when the UV resin comes out, because you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with UV resin? So we'll get the UV resin out, and I'll make some of those, the same thing I did in the last video, like those splashes where like it comes out of the bottle and it makes that kind of like drip effect. So when you've got the mirror flat, you'll have like a bit of this pattern risen up, and then we're also gonna have like some like splashes coming up, and it'll just be like a cute little world. Hopefully all of that made sense. Let's get started. Alrighty, so the first thing we're going to do is mix up that first layer of resin that is going to go straight onto the mirrors. So I'm using clear resin and alcohol ink, and all the names and brands of these will be in the description. So I'm adding a little bit more pink here because you can see me sort of pulling the resin out of the cup with the paddle pop stick, and that helps me to see how pigmented and how colored the resin is in a really thin layer, because it is going to be applied in a thin layer onto the mirror. Once I've figured out the opacity, I've decided on pink, purple, blue, green, and then this fifth color I'm actually mixing up with some pearl alcohol ink. So it's like a shimmery white kind of shade. And then I'm just pouring the alcohol ink directly onto the mirrors. I've got them sitting on cups because you want like a little bit of space between the mirror and your working space. And don't be scared to be really generous with the resin. You want it to drip off the sides of the mirror. Otherwise, you might experience what's called shrinkage. So when resin cures, it actually gets smaller, it shrinks. And if you don't put enough resin on top of the mirrors, you'll get this like funny little effect. It looks like this, and it's not pretty, and it's really, really hard to fix if fixable at all. So make sure you always use a little bit more resin than you need, which is why I like to put this plastic down on the desk, because once you've overpoured your resin and it's cured on the plastic, you can peel it off. And it looks like this, and I'm going to reuse it in a video coming in a couple of weeks where I make like a faux stained glass window effect. So yeah, that's just one of the ways that I try to like eliminate as much waste as possible when it comes to resin. Alrighty, and once they are cured, I'm coming around with my texter to draw in the shapes of where I want to put my flakes and glitters. When I want something to be super glittery and shine in the sun, I make sure to use at least 2 different kinds of glitters and flakes. So for the pink, I've got these pink flakes, and then I've also got these rainbow ones that I'm going to add into every color that I'm using today. So that way every piece is super glittery, but they also match. And to add on to that, once I'm done with this pink mix, I'm just going to put some purple alcohol ink straight into this pink mix and make the purple out of that. And that's going to make sure that my colors are like really cohesive. This purple mix is also going to have some purple pigment added to it to give it some depth and make it super purple. And I had quite a bit of these glittery mixes left over once I was done with the mirrors, so I used that overpour to make some trays. I love how these came out, and I do have an online shop in my description where you can buy all the little things I make, so check it out. I also made this cool little galaxy bathtub. But let's get back to the mirrors. So for the green one, I popped in a bit of this violet red pigment, which gives it like a bit of a pink shift. And to make the blue mix, I just added blue alcohol ink and a little bit of blue pigment into the green. And lastly, the white mirror was just colored with some of that same pink shift pigment, the violet red, and then those dream rainbow flakes so that it matched everything else. When I first had this idea, I kind of wanted it to look a bit like Arctic, like quite icy, and just looking at the way I'd placed the flakes, I didn't feel like I'd really gotten there. So I mixed some clear resin with just some white alcohol ink and used it to join the mirror and the glitters together, and I really like it. I really like the effect. I think it kind of brought it together. As always, you guys, you're welcome to leave a comment to let me know what you think. Like and subscribe if you're digging it, and let me know if you make anything out of resin or if you recreate this in any way, because quite a few people recreated my last UV resin video, and honestly that was like the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. So please let me know if you do the same. Alrighty, whoa, chill out. So the circles are dry. Just grab this one as an example. So now we're going to make the UV resin stuff. So we're going to make some little fish and sharks out of these molds. And then at the end, we'll make the splash effect to add to all of them. So we'll just go through what I have here. So I've got a bottle of UV resin, and I use a torch, a UV torch. So the bulbs in there are like UV bulbs. Some people use like a lamp, but I find that especially with projects like this, where I'm going to be sort of like pouring UV out of the bottle and then drying it, that's much harder to do when you're dealing with something like a lamp or something with legs that's not as portable as a torch. So I use a torch. On the left, I've got some coloring stuff. So when you're coloring things with UV resin, it can be kind of hard to color them with opaque pigments. And what I mean by opaque is like if you colored it you wouldn't be able to see through it. So it's not transparent. It's like the opposite of transparent. But I'm using these molds. So the plus side of using something so small and so thin, you can actually see how thin and transparent it is because you can see the mold all the way through, is that I'm going to be able to make some little sharks, you know, dark blue as an example, and they'll be opaque. And I'll be able to dry the top layer, and then I'll actually be able to flip the mold over, and I'll be able to dry them from the other side as well. This is something that takes like a little bit of practice, and it doesn't always work. So if you're going to give it a try, just be ready for a mess. When you're using UV resin, please wear gloves. I'm wearing a mask. Well, I will be in a second. I just have to talk to the camera first. Please wear gloves. I'm autistic and gloves really freak me out. And they make me really uncomfortable, and it makes it really difficult for me to concentrate and to be present. So sometimes you'll see me wearing gloves, sometimes you won't. But please, please, please wear the proper protective equipment. So I'll be making some fish and some sharks in green, blue, purple. Some in white as well. And because it's daytime and the sun is out, you can see that I'm right next to a window. I'm actually going to use, these are tiny little silicone molds that make little cups, but I quite like them. I flip them over and I use the inside as cups for my UV resin. If it was nighttime, I would just like squirt the UV resin out onto like a little silicone mat. But because there's so much sunlight in here, the sun might start setting the resin before I'm ready to use it. So I'm just going to pop them in here. And I've got these little guys for mixing, and I also have some wipes, which I always have these. My studio is full of like 50 majillion packets of these, just for if I spill resin on myself, on the floor, where it's not supposed to go, anywhere, like I'm just ready with these. So yeah, let's begin. I'll just start making a whole bunch of them in a couple of different colors, and then we'll have a look at what they look like on the mirror. Shit. Okay, with the mirrors done, it's time to jump into the UV resin. So I'm going to show you guys this process in real time. It takes about 30 seconds for me to make this particular bit. I am pouring UV resin directly out of the bottle that it came in, and I'm holding it at like a really slight angle so that the liquid pours out slower than it would if it was just coming straight out. And I'm just holding it in front of the torch. This takes a little bit of practice. It can get messy. You can see that it does drip. But once you've sort of got it going, it'll do this. It'll harden in front of your eyes. I then like to just hold the bottle upright and make sure that the UV resin is totally cured. You can see that I'm not wearing gloves in this part. I'm using a paddle pop stick to check if it's dry. I'm really, really making sure that this is completely cured before I touch it. Now I've made quite a long one, so I'm just going to compare how long it is to the mirror itself, and then I'm going to cut it down into a couple of different pieces. So you can see that it's just way too long. It looks a bit funky. So I'm going to cut it into a few different pieces, and then I'm going to come back in with the UV resin, drip a couple of drops onto it, and do what I did in my last video where I just want to make sure that cut off piece has the drip effect added back onto it. Now you'll see the little sort of collection of UV pieces that I've created, and you'll see those little drops that I've made. I thought I was gonna like save these drops, put them onto the mirror, and then like adhere them back on with more resin, but I found that it looked much nicer if I just dropped liquid UV onto the mirror and dried it where it was instead of using like the pre-made ones. But here what I'm doing is essentially our last step. I'm popping the little stick on there with just a drop of UV resin and drying him until he stands upright. And then we've got these cute little drips coming out of our little sort of Arctic aquarium kind of thing. I have no idea what to call these pieces. They're like a Geode aquarium Arctic rainbow piece. It doesn't really make sense, but I really like them. I think they turned out really well. Right now it's just me putting some little individual drops with the UV bottle and just kind of filling in any blank spaces where it felt like it was kind of empty. But once they were done, here's what they looked like individually. I really, really love how they turned out. I hope you guys like them as well. After this, I think I'm just gonna put like some blue tack or some hooks on the back and display them straight on the wall. I've got some holographic vinyl in my collection that I would love to use. So I would love to make these again, but instead of it being like a mirror effect, I could do like a holographic reflection. So if you guys would like to see me make another version of these, please let me know in the comments. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I hope you loved it. I will see you in 2 weeks. I'm gonna try to make my own neon sign. That's what we're doing. So I'll see you guys later.